Well, Democrats are mapping out their comeback trail ahead of the 2026 midterms. Yes, I know. Elections are just around the corner. Politico reports that the party is studying the rare bright spots in the election to chart their path ahead. And swing seat Democrats who actually won tight races in Pennsylvania and New York are urging their colleagues to lean into economic issues and border security concerns that rank top of mind for voters. My friend Michael Steele joins me now. He is the former chairman of the Republican National Committee, former lieutenant governor of Maryland. He also co-hosts The Weekend with me and Alicia Menendez right here on MSNBC. And Christina Greer is also here. She is also my friend, an associate professor of political science at Fordham University. She's also the author of the book Black Ethnics. Christina, let me start. I don't ever want to ask Michael Steele about Democrats first, because he's just, don't want to make him feel too good this late at night. So let me ask you first. Do you think this is the best strategy as Democrats are looking for new party leaders? Because elections for the DNC chair and the vice chairs of the Democratic Party are around the corner in just a couple months.
Right. I think the elections for the DNC chair and that entire sort of cabinet are incredibly important. We cannot have patronage politics when it comes to that position, and we can't have, someone, in no disrespect, but the Obamas can't keep putting their thumb on the scale for people that they want. We actually need to figure out a 50-state strategy, Jesse Jackson style, to see where the Democrats should go. I also think the Democrats need to stop chasing, non-college educated white voters who left the party during the era of Jimmy Carter. And they're consistently chasing these voters who have said consistently they don't want to be in the Democratic Party. There's a certain type of populism that they love with the Republican Party, even if the economic policies do not benefit them time after time. So I do think that there needs to be someone at the head of the DNC that really reshuffles the deck, because there were a lot of wins, as you pointed out, and there are a lot of curious anomalies with this particular 2024 election with why certain voters decided to go with the Republican Party. But I think making sure people feel motivated to actually come out for state house races, for congressional races, not just, every 4 years for the presidential, but really participating on local levels in primaries and also for down ticket races.
Mr. Chairman, what do you think about that? I mean, also in the context of this race for the DNC chair, whoever wins the race for the chair of the DNC, they have an incredibly challenging road ahead. It seems like inside baseball, but because Republicans have the White House, whoever is the chair and these vice chairs of the DNC, as you well know, they are going to help make or break the midterm elections. They are going to put together the process for Democrats to select their nominee for 2028 that starts now. So walk us through the issues that they'll have to face. And I know you have thoughts about a 50-state strategy.
Oh, I have absolute thoughts about a 50-state strategy. It's the smartest game in town. I think Christina's right. I think you've got to have a chairman who understands how to win across the country. When I came in as chairman in 2009, we had just gotten shellacked in 2008 by Obama. We gotten shellacked in 2006 in the congressional midterms, which was a massive drubbing for the GOP. I was on the ballot that year running for the U.S. Senate here in Maryland. And it didn't matter how much folks liked me as the sitting lieutenant governor. What they were concerned about was where the Republican Party was going under George Bush's leadership. And that is exactly the situation that the party finds itself now. The Democrats, where's the party going under Biden's leadership? And ostensibly under whoever's going to head the party going forward. So having a grounded understanding of where the country is and what the country is telling the party, that the middle of the country matters as much as the East and the West Coast, that the South matters as much as the North, I think becomes a very important part of a 50-state strategy in which the chairman, freed from the I call it strangulation. Others may use other terms of the White House on the political process, because their goal is to protect the president politically. The goal of the chairman is to win elections and to build the brand of the party so that they can win up and down the ballot. What the next chairman final point needs to understand is that you don't just win elections top down. You win elections bottom up, because there are a whole lot of candidates down ballot that will help your governors, that will help your Senate candidates in 2026, that will help your statewide candidates for other offices. So having that comprehensive strategy is smart. And please take whatever thumbs that are on the scale off, because you ain't winning ish when you got someone who's trying to move the scales or move the needle in a particular direction. That should be the responsibility of the next chairman.
Yeah, you know, Christina, I think you and the chairman are like spot on here. I used to be a DNC member. At one point in time, I think I was a consultant for the DNC in my little political life. And it's different when the president is the leader of your party. With the president as a Democrat, the DNC chair and the vice chairs, they are really not running anything. It is ran out of the political operation of the White House, if you will, and that's the same when you have when a candidate is running for president, the campaign then takes over the party apparatus. But this is uncharted territory. So the Democrats, Christine, are going to have to figure out kind of who they want to be, and they don't get to take months to do it because there's an election in Virginia, a gubernatorial election, and a lieutenant governor in Virginia, literally next year, state legislative seats in Virginia. Virginia is the only place in the South right now where if you need care that is an abortion, that you can get one that doesn't have some type of restriction in place. So while that's happening, Donald Trump is about to be inaugurated come January. And, lots of people are saying he's going to immediately become a lame duck president, and maybe that will have an effect on Democrat strategies. But I don't think it will. And I don't think the chairman agrees either. So I think he's with me. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he'll be a lame duck, but the good thing is the level of incompetence that is surrounding this president means that he'll overplay his hand at some point in time, and that will help Democrats because I think so many voters will just be exhausted. I think a lot of voters have forgotten about the circus that was the first Trump presidency. And as Chairman said, the bottom-up races do matter. Don't forget, Simone, I mean, you know this better than I. All states are red states, as I tell my students. It's just, do you have enough blue cities in those red states every 4 years to flip them in a presidential year? Looking at New York, we've gotten a gubernatorial race in 2026. That will be competitive because it was competitive in 2022. A lot of Democrats didn't take it seriously. I do think that as Democrats rebuild state houses that were lost during the Obama years because so many Democrats were so excited to have unified government for those first 2 years. Now, granted, they were saving the country from a financial cliff and trying to pass Obamacare. But so many lower level houses were lost. And now this rebuilding process is slowly taking shape. And so it is imperative that Democrats reorganize themselves, not just in Virginia next year, but really looking at your New Yorks and your New Jerseys and places that seemed really safe and making sure they shore those up as well from not just the coattails going down ticket, but obviously coming up the ticket as well.